An environmental impact statement summarizes into a single document the long-term effect the proposed project will have on the surrounding environment. It provides local government agencies and the public with important information regarding environmental impact that can be expected from the proposed development. The National Flood Insurance Program makes insurance available to owners, tenants, and businesses if the community participates. It's administered by FEMA, and the insurance is for properties located in special flood hazard areas. And notice that acronym, SFHA. Asbestos. That's a mineral fiber used until 1978 in a variety of building construction materials for insulation and as a fire retardant. Lead-based paint. It's estimated that 75% of the nation's housing stock built before 1978, which is about 64 million dwellings, contain lead-based paint, and the vast majority of the homes built before 1950 contain substantial amounts of lead-based paint. Radon. Decaying uranium in the soil produces radon gas, which can seep into homes and accumulate. Radon typically moves up through the ground to the air above and into homes through cracks in the foundation, utility conduits, spaces around plumbing, basement floors and walls, and crawl spaces. Formaldehyde. That's a colorless, strong-smelling gas used in making building materials and many household products. It's used in pressure-treated wood products such as particle board, plywood, and fiberboard, glues and adhesives, permanent press fabrics, paper product coatings, and certain insulation materials. Carbon monoxide. That's a colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas. And it's slightly less dense than air. It is toxic to humans and animals that use the hemoglobin as an oxygen carrier. And that's when they encounter it in concentrations above 35 parts per million. Polychlorinated biphenyls. That's a group of man-made chemicals. They're oily liquids or solids, clear to yellow in color with no smell or taste. They are very stable mixtures that are resistant to extreme temperature and pressure. They were used widely in electrical equipment like capacitors and transformers. Chlorofluorocarbons. That's any of several simple gaseous compounds that contain carbon, chlorine, fluorine, and sometimes hydrogen that are used as refrigerants, cleaning solvents, aerosol propellants, and in the manufacture of plastic foams that are believed to be a major cause of our stratospheric ozone depletion. Ew, it's mold. Mold reproduces by means of tiny spores. The spores are invisible to the naked eye and float through the outdoor and indoor air. The Safe Drinking Water Act. Groundwater is found under the Earth's surface and forms the water table. The Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974 regulates the public drinking water supply. On transfer of property, any water source other than a municipal supply should be tested, as should any septic system. Underground storage tanks, which contain petroleum products, industrial chemicals, and other substances, are a concern because leakage may imperil both public and private water sources. They are subject to federal law regulated by the EPA and state law, which is sometimes stronger than federal law. When a purchase is being considered, a careful inspection of any property on which underground storage tanks are suspect should be conducted. The underground water supply can be contaminated from leaking underground storage tanks, septic systems, storm drains, herbicides, and other sources. Contamination can threaten private wells, and public water supplies. CERCLA, Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act. This is for pollution, okay, in the land and stuff like that. PRP, they want you to know that that stands for potentially responsible persons. What happens is it makes the liability for the cleanup cost go towards everybody. It can be strict, which means they can just pick one person. It can be joint. They can pick a couple people or several people. And it can be retroactive all the way back to the person who drove the pollutive whatevers to that business. Now, for someone purchasing a property that may possibly be polluted, the way that they can not have to be responsible for cleanup costs if later it's found that it was polluted is to invoke the innocent landowner immunity. Basically what that means is that the purchaser, the buyer, gets, and it's a company that comes out and does a phase 1 audit. They're certified to do a phase 1 audit, and they will certify whether this property has the potential of ever being a, polluted piece of property, so to speak. There are national priorities lists, and it's sometimes fun to look it up on the internet and see how close you are to it.
Waste disposal sites can be owned by municipalities, be a part of commercial enterprises, or be found on farms or other rural properties. A landfill disposal site, whether excavated or making use of previously mined property, is lined to prevent seepage. It's capped with soil for aesthetic reasons and vented to release gases created by decomposing waste. Brownsville legislation encourages development of abandoned properties by shielding innocent developers from liability for toxic waste that existed at a site prior to the purchase. A little bit more about buyer brokerage agreements. Here's what it contains: the parties and the terms of the agreement, the characteristics of the property desired, broker's obligations, protection period, compensation, including any retainer, buyer's obligations, what happens if they terminate early, and what the authorized broker relationship is. Termination of the buyer representation. It's terminated when the agreement purpose is fulfilled, the term expires, the broker and the buyer mutually agree to cancel the agreement, the broker or the buyer breaches the terms of the agreement, or the broker or the buyer dies or becomes incapacitated.